Hello, what's up YouTube? We are here today with another Getting Started video. If you've already checked out our Getting Started video about the Lord's Labyrinth, today we're going to talk about the boss that you encounter not once, not twice, but 3 times in the Lord's Labyrinth. His name is Izaro. So let's chat a little bit about Izaro. Izaro is the boss of the Lord's Labyrinth. He is encountered 3 times throughout the labyrinth in the Aspirant's Trial Room. So let's check out exactly a little bit about his lore and his background. Izaro is, at least in my opinion, one of the best voice acted characters in all of Path of Exile. He's great. I love hearing his quotes. I love hearing him when you kill Argus, and he bemoans the death of Argus, his beloved pet. But anyway, here's some of his lore. Izaro Mechanics was the last emperor of the royal Fricarius. Anyway, Izaro was the last emperor of the royal Izaro family, and the third to last emperor of the Eternal Empire. Unable to produce an heir and desperate to find a worthy successor, an obscure text detailing the ancient Asmerian traditions of ascendancy inspired Izaro to commission the construction of the Labyrinth, using it as his inspiration. He declared that anyone who can pass his labyrinth will be declared the next emperor. Chittus Parandus was the first person to do so. When the aging Izaro retired and gave the throne to Chittus on the first Kasaro of Verusi, 1319 IC, the new emperor immediately cast Izaro into the Lord's Labyrinth and sealed the gates behind him. Twinned with the goddess he worshipped, Emperor Izaro lives on in the labyrinth. All right, so that's Izaro's lore. A little bit about his abilities. He's got several different abilities, and depending on the day and the type of labyrinth that you are in, you may see different abilities used. It's straight up, simple as that. Sometimes it can be random. Every single day, the labyrinth resets in terms of Izaro and what his abilities are. So depending on what day it is, you'll be able to see Izaro using these different abilities. Some of them are more dangerous than others. So first off, he's got a ground slam, where he raises his weapon high up and then slams the ground, dealing heavy physical damage in an area in front of him. Deals more damage the closer you are to the center of the AoE, only used while Izaro is wielding a 2-handed mace. So if he's not wielding a 2-handed mace, you don't have to worry about the Grand Slam. Radiant Slash. He winds up and slashes, releasing a huge expanding projectile forward, dealing heavy damage. Only used while Izaro is wielding dual swords. Leap Slam. Leaps at a player and slams the ground, dealing heavy physical damage. Notice that there's no weapon qualifier on that, so he can simply use that whenever he wants to. Shield Bash. Charges up, then dashes forward and swings his shield, dealing heavy physical damage on contact. Almost identical to Vol's Shield Bash attack. Sunder. He sends a wave that travels forward. On hit, it creates a shock wave that deals damage in an area. The wave can hit the same target multiple times. That Sunder attack can actually stun you. It is possible to get stunned by multiple different hits on that Sunder attack, so be aware of that. Spikes. Izaro strikes the ground and channels, releasing spikes from the ground at the player's location. The spiky ground deals damage over time and slows. Alright, so Izaro is assisted by the Goddess of Justice, who attacks independently from Izaro. So she's got a mortar barrage. She lobs mortars towards the player, dealing fire damage in an area where they land. She also can summon guardians. She bombards a random area, each explosion summoning a skeleton. And then she's got a teleport. She casts a green circle around Izaro in a random area in a trapped area. After a delay, anyone within Izaro's circle will be teleported to the other side, only used on the third fight on Cruel and Merciless. You got to be careful with the teleport, because if traps aren't disabled in that final fight, then if you're standing right next to Izaro when the teleport goes off, you leave the immediate vicinity of Izaro, which is great because Izaro won't hurt you, but now you're on top of traps. And as we covered in our Labyrinth video, you know that traps scale with player HP, not with monster zone level, which means that you're in a very, very deadly situation when you get teleported onto those traps. All right, so couple of different times that you're going to encounter Izaro, regardless of the level of labyrinth that you're in. There are going to be 3 fights. So the first 2 encounters with Izaro add new mechanics to the fight that carry on to the next encounter. The mechanics change daily alongside the layout of the labyrinth. Izaro will be encountered in a room containing 3 small holes in the ground that will introduce the additional mechanics for that particular fight. A forbidden reliquary room contains a trinket, which makes the mechanics easier to deal with. Any mechanics that have not been dealt with will carry over for the subsequent fights. However, leaving the mechanics untouched i.e. don't destroy any portals, have all 3 idols activate, or don't activate any charge disruptors, etc., will result in Izaro dropping an additional treasure key on death after the 3rd Izaro encounter. That's great! So when you hear people talking about full treasure key runs, they're talking about not touching, not dealing with the mechanics, not destroying the mechanics, but instead intentionally leaving the mechanics of Izaro up, making him more difficult to take down, but there's an additional treasure key to unlock in the treasure room once you've defeated Izaro. Okay, so here are the different types. Conduits. 3 statues, 1 for each element, are located in each corner of the room. While active, the statues provide Izaro with increased damage, added damage, and resistance to the corresponding element. The statues can be clicked on to deactivate them for a short time. If the player possesses a cube of absorption, they will disable the first conduit they click permanently. Any statues active when Izaro is defeated continue to provide their benefits through any remaining encounters. If the player brings Izaro to the next phase while all conduits are active, the player is qualified for an additional treasure key drop. Conduits still underground count as active when the phase ends. So in other words, if you can skip the animation and do enough damage to Izaro while this stuff is still coming up, at least for conduits, it'll still count as being active. Charge disruptors. Izaro will gain charges throughout the encounter, granting him bonuses to damage, speed, and defense. Izaro can have a maximum of 10 charges on him. Charges can be removed by activating one of the 3 charge disruptors. Each charge disruptor can only be used once. When Izaro has 10 charges, he will say, "Behold the machinery at maximum efficiency!" If the player possesses cogs of disruption, the first charge disruptor you use will reactivate shortly afterwards, allowing 1 additional use. Any charges active when Izaro is defeated will persist permanently for any remaining encounters. Not activating any charge disruptors and leaving Izaro at maximum charges at the end of the fight will qualify you for an additional key drop. Elemental essences. 3 elemental essences, burning essence, freezing essence, and crackling essence, that take the form of golems will join the fight one after another. After rising out of the floor, they will slowly walk towards Izaro, attempting to bond with him. These golems can be killed during this period. If they touch Izaro, they will disappear and confer their bonuses to him for the remainder of the fight, which persists for future encounters. Each golem grants additional damage, resistance, and a chance of applying a status ailment of their respective element. If the player possesses an orb of elemental dispersion, the first essence the player damages will be instantly killed. Any essence that is not killed will confer its bonuses to Izaro for the remaining fights and returns as an enemy, but will attack the player instead of attempting to bond with Izaro. Having all 3 essences bond with Izaro or remain alive when the trial ends will qualify for an additional key drop. Gargoyles. Izaro will summon 3 gargoyles to join him in the fight. Each gargoyle initially starts inactive and has an extremely high amount of damage reduction, making it very difficult to kill. When a gargoyle activates, it will lose its damage reduction and channel a beam, indicating which gargoyle has activated. Each gargoyle grants different bonuses to Izaro. Granite-infused gargoyle grants damage reduction. Basalt-infused gargoyle grants increased damage dealt, and Quicksilver-infused gargoyle grants increased movement speed, and maybe attack speed. We're not sure about that. After the gargoyle finishes channeling, it will become mobile and attack the player. Once a gargoyle is killed, Izaro will lose his bonuses from the respective gargoyle. If the player possesses a heart of the gargoyle, the first gargoyle the player damages will instantly be killed. Any gargoyles that are left alive will permanently confer its bonuses to Izaro and return in remaining fights as enemies. Leaving all 3 gargoyles alive will qualify for an additional treasure key drop. Idols. 3 idols will appear in each corner, 1 for each element. These idols start with a minimum life and cannot die. Each idol will slowly regenerate life over time. Once they reach full life, the idol will cast fire, ice, or lightning beacon, creating multiple delayed explosions in random areas that deal elemental damage, the same explosions as, say, Flame, Frost, Storm, Bearers, Bloodlines enemies. Then return to minimum life. If the player possesses a Sand of Eternity, the first idol a player attacks will not regenerate life. If an idol has activated at least once, it will return in the remaining fights in an unreachable area. Having all 3 idols activate at once will qualify for an additional treasure key drop. Lieutenants. 3 skeletal lieutenants will spawn in each corner, 1 at a time. Each lieutenant corresponds to an element and has different abilities. The 3 lieutenants are the Lieutenant of the Mace with fire, Lieutenant of Rage with cold, Lieutenant of the Bow with lightning. If the player possesses a Bane of the Loyal, the first lieutenant the player damages will be instantly killed. Any lieutenants left alive will return in the remaining fights. Leaving all 3 lieutenants alive will qualify for an additional treasure key drop. Lieutenants still underground count as alive when the phase ends. Summoning portals. 3 portals will spawn in each corner, 1 at a time. Each portal continuously summons skeletal mages of a specific element. Once the portal is destroyed, it will stop spawning skeletons. If the player possesses a portal shredder, the first portal the player damages will be instantly destroyed. Any portal left intact will return in the remaining fights. Leaving all 3 portals intact will qualify for an additional treasure key drop. Portals still underground count as alive when the phase ends. Fonts. 3 fonts will spawn in each corner. No, we're not talking about Comic Sans and Times New Romans. Alright, 1 at a time. Each font casts a curse on the player. Font of Fragility casts Vulnerability. Font of Lethargy casts Temporal Change. And Font of Elements casts Elemental Weakness. Fonts can be damaged, and when destroyed, they cast an empowered version of its curse on the player for 10 seconds. The curse cast by the fonts are affected by curse removal and immunity effects. So if you're running a curse removal flask, hey, you're okay. If the player possesses a Rod of Detonation, the first font the player damages will be instantly destroyed. Any fonts left intact will return for the remaining fights. Leaving all 3 fonts intact will qualify for an additional treasure key drop. Fonts still underground count as alive when the phase ends. Alright, then in the third and final encounter, the third and final mechanic will add 2 different Labyrinth traps plus Sentinel traps in the endgame Labyrinth. So in the Uber Lab, you'll get the additional bonus of Sentinel traps. Oh joy! To the room. The encounter takes place in, not during normal. On cruel and on higher difficulties, Izaro's Goddess of Justice can use teleport, casting the green circle around Izaro, which teleports the player after a delay into the trap-filled area. So here we see the image of what teleport looks like. You can see the green teleport that the goddess is using, and she's going to teleport you right, look at that, right to the intersection of those traps. Like, the goddess is not a nice lady. She's just not. Anyway, all right, so that's a little bit about Izaro, a little bit about his mechanics, a little bit about his abilities, and a little bit about the different things that you're going to encounter. Of course, the benefit of doing full treasure drops is that at the end, when you kill Izaro, you of course get to go into his treasure room and spoil his treasure, as well as enchant either your gloves, your boots, or your helms, or maybe even if you get some dark shrines bonuses for maybe multiple times where you'll get to enchant something, and multiple extra keys where you'll get lots and lots of goodies, lots and lots of loot. So that's Izaro in a nutshell. If you've got questions, go ahead and leave them down below in the comments. As always, like and subscribe for more Getting Started Path of Exile videos.